Imagine trying to start a fire with wet wood. Imagine trying to hold water in your bare hands. Imagine spending weeks, months building a trap, only to realize the person you were trying to catch was never in the room. This is what happens when a toxic personality meets someone who has mastered the art. To the toxic personality, this kind of person is not just an annoyance. They are an unbreakable code, a mirror that refuses to shatter, a wall that has no cracks. The manipulation tactics that work on 99% of people. They don't just fail, they backfire. The gaslighting flickers against a wall that won't absorb it. The guilt trips dissolve before they even leave the station. The insults, they land on a surface that doesn't flinch, and the toxic person is left standing there, confused, holding a bag of tricks that suddenly feel useless. What happens when you try to start a fire, but the person you're targeting is made of stone? What are these tactics that break the manipulator's mind? And more importantly, what does it take to become the kind of person they cannot touch? Let's find out. But this isn't just a list of tips. This is a deep dive into a philosophy of self-preservation, a look at what happens when you stop playing a game you never agreed to join. And the lone wolf? They don't even know they're winning. They're just living. Now, before we go any further, we need to be clear about something. What you're about to hear, the lone wolf does not call tactics. They don't wake up in the morning thinking, "Today I will employ an information blackout." They don't rehearse grey rocking in the mirror. They don't strategize their exits. This is not a game to them. It is simply how they are built. But here's the twist. Toxic people do see these behaviors as tactics, because toxic people see everything through the lens of strategy. To a manipulator, every silence is a power move. Every boundary is a provocation. Every refusal to react is a calculated insult. They cannot comprehend a person who simply is. So they project. They assume the lone wolf is playing the same game, just better. And that is where the irony lives. The lone wolf isn't trying to win. They're trying to be left alone. The toxic person, however, is desperate to win. And that desperation is what makes them lose. So as we walk through these behaviors, remember, to the lone wolf, they aren't weapons. They are just the walls of a home they built to survive. To the toxic person, those same walls feel like a fortress built specifically to keep them out. Both are right, but only one of them is losing sleep over it. Part 1. The Great Starvation. Imagine a parasite. For a parasite to survive, it needs a host. It needs blood, it needs warmth. It needs the host to react, to itch, to scratch, to feed it. Now imagine a host that doesn't bleed. This is the first reality that a toxic personality faces when they encounter a lone wolf, and it is the one that frustrates them more than anything else. It is the tactic of the information blackout. In the world of social dynamics, information is currency. Gossip is the stock market. Secrets are the leverage. Most people, when they meet someone new, feel a social pressure to fill the silence. They share, they overshare. They offer up their fears, their past traumas, their weekend plans, their salary, their relationship drama. They hand over the ammunition without realizing it. The toxic person collects this. They file it away. They learn what makes you insecure. They learn who you love, so they can use them as a pressure point later. They learn your dreams, so they can subtly suggest you aren't good enough to reach them. But the lone wolf operates on a different frequency. When asked a personal question, they don't feel the urge to answer. They don't feel the silence pressing down on them. They simply pause, or they deflect with a question of their own, or they give an answer so broad and meaningless that it dissolves in the air. Where do you work? Around. How was your weekend? It was fine. It's not rudeness, it's discernment. You see, the lone wolf has learned a lesson that society tries very hard to unteach you. Society tells you that to be liked, you must be known. That transparency equals trust. That vulnerability is always strength. But the lone wolf knows the truth. Vulnerability is strength when it is chosen. It is not strength when it is demanded. It is not connection when it is extracted. By withholding the details of their inner world, the lone wolf creates a vacuum, and the toxic person thrives on filling vacuums with their own narrative. But they can't, because there is nothing to grab onto. Imagine trying to climb a cliff face made of polished glass. That's the toxic person trying to find a foothold in the lone wolf's life. They can't gossip about you because they don't know anything. They can't turn your friends against you Because they don't have the twisted version of your story to tell. They can't use your past against you because your past is a locked door, and you're the only one holding the key. This isn't paranoia. This is the simple arithmetic of self-defense. If you do not give them the bricks, they cannot build the prison. But here is where the psychological impact deepens. The lone wolf doesn't do this to hide. They do it because they have realized that most of what the world calls connection is actually just performance. They'd rather have one genuine conversation in a year than 100 superficial exchanges that drain their soul. And when the toxic person realizes they can't get in, something happens. They start to sweat, they try harder. They ask more invasive questions. They start to mock the silence. They call the lone wolf mysterious in a tone that is meant to sound like an insult. And the lone wolf, they just smile, or they walk away, because they know. The silence isn't empty. The silence is the sound of their power being preserved. Part 2. The mirror that won't reflect. There is a concept in psychology called mirroring. We do it naturally. When someone smiles at us, we smile back. When someone is angry, our heart rate often increases to match theirs. It's how we bond. It's how we empathize. The toxic person, particularly the one with narcissistic traits, weaponizes this. They rely on what is called narcissistic supply. They need you to react. They need to see their reflection in your emotional state. If they insult you, they need to see you flinch. If they gaslight you, they need to see the confusion in your eyes. If they give you a gift, they need to see the gratitude that puts you in their debt. They need the reflection. The lone wolf, however, has mastered a tactic that is so simple it sounds fake. It's called radical self-validation. And it is the most terrifying thing a manipulator can face. What is radical self-validation? It is the art of being your own source of truth. Most people walk through life looking for external proof. They need the promotion to know they are competent. They need the likes to know they are attractive. They need the toxic person's approval to feel safe in the room. But the lone wolf has done the internal work. Or they have been burned so badly in the past that they built a firewall. So when the toxic person walks up to them and delivers a classic backhanded compliment, you know the type. Wow, you're actually really smart for someone like you. Or I love how you just wear anything and don't care what people think. The average person hears the insult hidden inside. Their face flushes. They try to defend themselves. What do you mean for someone like me? They get pulled into a debate where they have to prove their worth. The lone wolf? The lone wolf hears the insult, analyzes it for a millisecond, categorizes it as irrelevant data, and discards it. They don't get defensive because they don't see the toxic person as a judge. They see the toxic person as a spectator, and a spectator doesn't get to change the game. When the toxic person says, "You're too quiet," the lone wolf says nothing. Why would they? Aren't they quiet? When the toxic person says, "You think you're better than everyone," the lone wolf says, "I see." No denial, no agreement. Just a flat acknowledgement that a sound was made. This is what we call indifference, and indifference is the kryptonite of the toxic personality. Why? Because the toxic person's entire world revolves around relevance. They need to be the cause of your emotional highs and lows. If they can't make you angry, if they can't make you cry, if they can't make you dance for their approval, then in their mind, you don't see them as real. And to a toxic person, being seen as irrelevant is worse than being hated. The philosophical weight here is heavy. What the lone wolf is practicing is a form of stoicism. They are separating what is within their control from what is outside of it. The insult is outside their control. The toxic person's opinion is outside their control. But how they receive it, that is the only thing that belongs to them. They refuse to let the toxic person be the author of their emotional reality. And there is a beauty in this. A lonely beauty, perhaps, because when you stop caring what people say about you, you realize how much energy you were wasting. You realize that most of your anxiety was just you agreeing to play a rigged game. The lone wolf didn't win by playing better. The lone wolf won by refusing to play at all. Part 3, the ungiftable debt. Let's talk about currency. In the toxic economy, there is a currency more valuable than money. It is obligation. This is the trap of the nice guy or the helpful friend who is actually a predator. They offer you a ride when you didn't ask. They buy you lunch when you were fine paying for yourself. They do you a favor that you never requested. On the surface, it looks like kindness, but beneath the surface, it is a loan. A loan with an interest rate so high it will cost you your freedom. They are building a ledger, and one day when they need you to lie for them, or cover for them, or tolerate their abuse, they will pull out that ledger. After all I did for you, they will say, I bought you that coffee. I drove you home that one time. You owe me. The toxic person views human interaction as a transaction. They give to take. Enter the lone wolf. The lone wolf has a constitutional inability to accept unearned favors. It's not pride, it's not being difficult. It is a deep instinctual knowledge that everything has a cost. When someone offers them something they didn't ask for, their alarm bells ring. If they accept that ride, now they are trapped in a car with that person. If they accept that unsolicited gift, now they are expected to attend the party. If they let the toxic person help them with a project, now the toxic person has a stake in the outcome. So the lone wolf does the unthinkable in a society obsessed with politeness. They say no thank you, and they mean it. They don't make excuses. They don't say, oh, I'm so busy. They don't justify. They just decline. And if the toxic person insists, the lone wolf holds the line. No, I've got it. What happens in the toxic person's mind at that moment is a short circuit. Their entire operating system is built on the assumption that people are desperate for help, that people want to be taken care of, that people are weak. They aren't prepared for someone who handles their own burdens. They aren't prepared for someone who doesn't want to be saved, because they aren't drowning. This is the violation of the social debt. The lone wolf refuses to go into debt. They keep their ledger clean. They owe no one. And here is the cruel irony for the toxic person. If they can't give you something, they can't take something from you. And if they can't take something from you, you are free. This is why toxic people often escalate when they meet a lone wolf. They try harder to give. They try to force help on them. They try to create a crisis just so they can be the hero. Because the lone wolf's independence is a challenge to their control. But the lone wolf, standing in the rain with their own umbrella, doesn't even see it as a challenge. They just see a wet person trying to take their umbrella, and they walk away dry. Part 4, The Art of the Exit. There is a phrase in psychological warfare. You cannot manipulate someone who isn't there. Think about the architecture of conflict. Every argument needs a stage. Every drama needs an audience. Every manipulation needs a participant who stays in the room to fight for their reputation, to explain themselves, to beg to be understood. The toxic person is a master of the stage. They know how to draw you into a scene. They know how to make you feel like if you walk away, you lose. They whisper, if you leave now, you're proving me right. They rely on your fear of being misunderstood. The lone wolf, however, has a superpower that looks like rudeness to the uninitiated. It is the power of selective presence, or as we like to call it, the ghost factor. The lone wolf has a high walk-away capacity. They are not anchored to the room by ego. They are not chained to the conversation by the need to win. They have a very simple internal threshold. Is this productive? Is this safe? Is this worth my time? If the answer is no, they do not hesitate. They leave. Let's look at the mechanics of this. When a toxic person starts to escalate, maybe they are raising their voice. Maybe they are employing circular arguments to confuse you. Maybe they are trying to bait you into losing your temper. The lone wolf doesn't engage. They don't try to reason with the unreasonable. They don't try to prove the facts to someone who doesn't care about facts. They simply say, I'm done with this conversation. And they exit. No emotional explosion, just absence. This is devastating to the toxic psyche. Why? Because the toxic person was prepared for a war. They rehearsed their lines. They imagined you crying or yelling or begging. They wanted the audience to see them as the victim and you as the villain. But if you're not there, the show is cancelled. The energy they built up has nowhere to go. It turns back on them, it festers. They are left standing alone in the room, holding the script with no one to perform for. The lone wolf isn't running away. This is the crucial distinction. The lone wolf is dismissing the conflict. They are looking at the situation, assessing it as a waste of their finite time on this earth, and choosing peace over chaos. Society conditions us to believe that staying in a fight is brave. But the lone wolf knows a deeper truth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to dignify the fight with your presence. What happens when you stop caring about your reputation in the eyes of people you don't respect? You become free. You realize that the only opinion that matters when you walk out that door is your own, and you realize that the feeling of walking away from a burning building is not defeat. It is relief. Part 5. The pebble in the shoe. We've all heard of grey rocking. It's a common tactic recommended for dealing with narcissists. The idea is to become boring, to be like a grey rock, no interesting features, no reactions, no juice. But most people who try to grey rock do it consciously. They have to remind themselves to be boring. It's an effort, it's a performance. For the lone wolf, it is not a tactic, it is a state of being. When a toxic person tries to get a reaction out of a lone wolf, they are met with a wall of minimalism. The lone wolf's answers are short. Their face is neutral. They do not mirror the toxic person's excitement, their anger, or their desperation. What do you think about what she did to me? I don't know. Aren't you furious? Not really. Well, if you were a real friend, you would be. Okay. Now, to the average observer, this might look like the lone wolf is cold or unempathetic, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is the lone wolf is refusing to be used. The toxic person isn't looking for genuine connection. They are looking for a weapon. They want the lone wolf to get angry so they can say, "See how violent you are." They want the lone wolf to cry so they can say, "See how weak you are." They want the lone wolf to engage in gossip so they can later pin the blame on them. The lone wolf denies them this. By being boring, by being non-reactive, they become a bad investment for the toxic person's time. The toxic person is an energy vampire, and the lone wolf is a room with no electricity. But let's go deeper. Why is this so effective? It's because the toxic person's ego is built on relevance. If they can make you laugh, they feel powerful. If they can make you cry, they feel powerful. But if they can't make you do anything, they feel powerless. And a powerless toxic person is a dangerous one. The Stoics believed that our freedom lies not in controlling events, but in controlling our reactions to them. The lone wolf has internalized this. They know that the moment they react emotionally to the toxic person's provocation, they have given away their freedom. They are now dancing to a tune written by their abuser. So they refuse. They sit in the silence. They let the toxic person's words hang in the air, unanswered, unsupported, like a joke that no one laughed at. And eventually the toxic person moves on. They find someone who does react, someone who bleeds. Because the lone wolf is just a pebble. And you can't get blood from a stone. Part 6. The silence of the no. This is perhaps the most feared tactic of the lone wolf. Not because it is aggressive, but because it is absolute. Toxic people view the word no as a negotiation. When you set a boundary with a toxic person, they don't hear a limit. They hear a puzzle to solve. They hear a wall to climb. They immediately start trying to find the loophole. I don't want to talk about that. Oh, come on, why not? Don't you trust me? I'm just trying to help. You're so secretive. It's unhealthy. See what happened? The toxic person took the boundary and turned it into a conversation about the validity of the boundary. They want you to justify your no. They want you to explain, to defend, to argue. Because while you are arguing, the boundary is already broken. You are already engaged. The lone wolf doesn't engage in this. The lone wolf states the boundary once, clearly, without anger, without explanation. I'm not discussing this. And then they act. If the toxic person brings up the topic again, the lone wolf does not give a warning. They do not usually say, "I told you, stop." They simply end the interaction. They hang up the phone, they leave the room. They walk out of the coffee shop, they go home. No drama, no speech, just consequence. This is what we call boundary enforcement without explanation. And it is brutal in its simplicity. To the toxic person, this feels like violence. It feels like abandonment. It feels like a rejection of their very existence, and in a way it is. Because the lone wolf is saying, "I have told you the rules of my world. If you choose to break them, you are choosing to not be in my world." The toxic person hates this because it removes their greatest weapon. They can't lawyer their way around a door that is already closed. They can't gaslight someone who is no longer on the phone. For the lone wolf, this is a matter of integrity. They don't make threats. They make decisions. They don't bluff. Because bluffing is a form of engagement. And the lone wolf doesn't want to manage the toxic person's behavior. They want to manage their own environment. This is the deepest level of the psychological impact. The lone wolf has realized that you cannot change a toxic person. You cannot love them into being healthy. You cannot explain your boundaries well enough to make them respect you. All you can do is control your own proximity to them. And so they do. They pull back. They create space. And in that space, they find peace. Conclusion: the unconquerable self. So what is it about the lone wolf that toxic people hate so much? Is it the silence, the boundaries, the refusal to perform? Yes, but it is more than that. What the toxic person truly hates is the sovereignty. The lone wolf has done something that most people are too afraid to do. They have looked at the social contract, the one that says you must be liked, you must be available, you must forgive, you must share, you must participate in the drama, and they have rejected it. They have realized that the greatest power in the world is not money, not status, not popularity. It is the power to walk away. It is the power to be whole alone. It is the power to say no and mean it, without a single tremor in the voice. The toxic person looks at this and sees a fortress they cannot breach. They see a person who is not hungry for their validation, not scared of their rejection, not trapped by their guilt, and it drives them mad, because the toxic person's power is built on the illusion that you need them. But the lone wolf doesn't need anyone, and that is the most dangerous thing in the world to a predator. If you recognized yourself in this video, if you know what it feels like to be the one who walks away, know this: you are just done. Done giving your peace away. Done letting people who don't matter dictate how you feel. The lone wolf doesn't hate the pack. They just don't need the pack to survive. And that is the kind of freedom that no one can ever take from you.